that I think I'm onto something here. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be without it. It did wonderful things for me.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sacred Matrix. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and our producer is Thomas Becker, and also known as Amadpainter. I'm getting feedback. Let me check something here. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, that'll help it. We're on Revolution Radio, Studio B, and our guest today is John Shaughnessy. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about John before we pull him on. And if you're not speaking, if you could mute so we don't get all the feedback. We're getting a lot of feedback. Okay, John Shaughnessy, enlisted in the U.S. Navy and spent 3 years on the last frigate, USS Miller FF 1091. And during his deployments, lots of feedback, he visited close to 50 foreign countries and became a voracious reader. During a simple deployment, he became obsessed with the paranormal after an unexplained event while cruising through the Bermuda Triangle aboard the USS Miller. And on this special day, the sky was blue, the same color as the ocean, and we could not see the beginning or end to the horizon or the ocean. There were no wind or waves, and the ocean was like glass, and the temperature was 95 degrees Fahrenheit when this mighty fighting ship just lost power. And we were dead in the water for over an hour. And to this day, there's been no official explanation. So John's passions are in the alternative world of ancient human history and theoretical physics. He has 2 books, Pyramid Gravity Force, which explains the purpose and operations of all the pyramids scattered around the 4 corners of the world. And the second book, and the co-authors are Salter and Shaughnessy, ushers in a new age of reasoning out with the old superstition and backward ways and in with newly rediscovered logic to liberate the human consciousness with this amazing discovery. There's more information on aquarianradio.com. I put up a show page and a bio and some pictures of John. So, Dr. Sasha, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Hello?
can. Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Good.
Yeah, so John has developed a hydraulic a way of looking at the planet. It's explained so much. So really listen up. You're going to learn.
Okay, yeah. You were bopping in and out, but I guess this will even out. Hi, John Shaughnessy. Welcome to the show.
Oh,
we're going to talk about your 2 books. The second one is There's Something About the Moon. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover. So tell us about yourself, how you got into this, and your theories. And we're going to listen for about the first 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to interrupt you with questions, because we're going to have a lot of questions. Okay. Take it away.
All right. Well, of course, I just drank some water. It went down the wrong way.
Go ahead and cough.
That's
cough
typical.
away. We want you to be okay.
It's like it's shaking the truth out of me now. So,
Yep.
just, on planet Earth like everybody else, just finding my way through. I grew up on the outskirts of Boston, small town called Belmont. And, I got into science early on. I ended up picking up a weekend job at the planetarium at the Museum of Science.
Oh, lucky you.
So I really got immersed in, the Zeiss projector, and I was running around the outside of the planetarium changing slides as a kid, keeping up with the show on cue. We had those old Bell and Howell projectors, and it changed the slides at certain times to keep the show going. So on the weekends I would have the place to my own for a few hours in the morning, and I just put the projector on. I was getting familiar with the sky, the constellations, all the theories about the energies out there, the quasars, and just dark black holes, and how things worked. And you don't know why you end up in these jobs there, or they're forming you as you go through your adolescence. I think I was like 15, 16 years old. So, anyways, fast forward, joined the service in the Navy. Went around the world. 2/3 of the planet is ocean. I can verify it. It's round. It's spherical. Wow. So I went to a lot of countries, checked out how everybody else was living, and I read a lot. There was a lot of free time on the ship, and I was in the engineering department, involved in the ship's propelling, and so I got involved in a lot of the sciences with engineering and fossil fuels and turbines and things of that nature. So that all being said, I got out of the service and got into, I kind of stayed in the same trade with, get into, power generation, fossil fuel plants operated, got into, as I worked my way up, I became a, operations supervisor. I worked on aeroderivative, gas turbines, jet engines, basically, the Airbus jet engines. They basically, you'd strap it to a generator, and things of that nature. So I was just, for the most part, you're exposed to a lot of the highest technology, the latest metallurgy. A lot of it's just exposed to a lot of unbelievable, new technologies coming out, magnetic clutches without touching, there's no physical touching, but yet they're able to hold a 150 horsepower motor and turn a pump without any contact between the pump and the motor. So I got really a good education. I guess the way you could sum it up is I was around the equipment, I was around a lot of equipment.
John, if I may, it sounds like if you were going to arrange the world so that John would get the technological knowledge and the cosmological understanding and bring those two things together, it almost sounds like it's beyond the fact that you stumbled. There's got to be some kind of larger organization that either you were ghosting from your future back to prepare the present John, or some big plan of which you're a part is manifesting through you.
It's good analogy. Yeah, I think you're spot on that one, because when you look back at it, it's like, well, how did I get here? So it's like you get nudges. You feel you get a nudge from a power beyond yourself. And exactly. So you're reading things. I'm reading Einstein's theory of relativity in my spare time, and I'm telling my friends that I'm doing that, and they think I'm out of my mind. It's like to them, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. They couldn't stand it. So. But I really I just got into gravity, and like you alluded to at the beginning of the show, I had a paranormal event in the Navy with the ship just losing power. It was this mighty ship with nuclear capabilities as far as weapons are concerned, and the backup generators didn't work. We were just sitting there dead in the water, and there was something eerie about it because you had 200 some odd sailors on board, and it was very quiet. You're just looking. It was almost like you're communicating with looks, and you look at each other's faces and eyes, and there was very, very little chatter going on. And mind you, the temperatures were getting, we're breaking thermometers below decks. That's how hot it was getting, and because the ventilation went down with it, and it was pretty scary for a while, just on battery. So we did have like a few little local battery lanterns that did light up certain areas that you could see. But other than that, we just completely dead in the water. So that really spiked my interest in the Bermuda Triangle. What's going on there? So I started reading a lot of books on that, and I got into Eric von Doniken's work, and Charles Hapgood. It's obviously Graham Hancock played a big part of me studying things, and so as life went on, I started I started to read things, and I was always obsessed with these pyramids. Like, what is going on with these pyramids? They're all over the place. It's just too too simplistic of an idea to have them just be tombs. There had to be more going on. And one day I walked into the living room, and the TV was on, and Machio Aku, he's a big physicist out of New York. Before the break to the commercial, I forget it was on the Discovery Channel or something, and the last words coming out of his mouth before I was doing the free fall into the Lazy Boy was, we still don't know what these pyramids are doing, So I sunk into the chair, and I it was like I've always been obsessed with globes, ever since I got into my own houses, apartments, and things of that nature. So I always have globes around. So I had a floor-mounted globe in the room, and I'm looking at the globe's looking at me, and I said, it just I just wondered what was on the other side of the Giza Plateau, like what was it lining up with, 180 degrees opposed to it on the same approximate latitude, So get up there, made the 15-foot trek to the globe, spun it around. I found, Giza, and then 180 degrees away, it landed right on the Hawaiian hotspot. I said, whoa, that's trippy. So right then and there, mind you, I've, been doing gravity experiments at my house, in my, in my spare time at work and things of that nature. So I was, very, very aware of the gravitational influence on the planet. So a few days, months, weeks go by, and I started to lock in on it. Just every waking minute I kept locking in on this alignment. And I I Googled it. There was nothing on the internet about the alignment. There was no books on it. There was nothing. I was like, okay, this is a little strange. So I said, well, what's the common thread here? And it's got to be a gravitational connection between the two because they're so far apart. And so I said, well, we asked the simple question, keep it simple, right? It's like, well, if those two are lining up, what are the other pyramids doing? So I went out and I started looking at the other pyramids. The Pyramid of the Sun lined up with Mount Sajira in Sri Lanka, and that mountain's another place that has very little history to it, but they got these giant claws that are on par with the Sphinx size over in Egypt at the base of a magma plug that is in an extinct volcano. So okay, we got a connection there, and I go, well, we got the Shen pyramids in China actually lined up with the Bermuda Triangle, and then there was El Tigre and a lot of pyramids down there in the Yucatan Peninsula, Central America, and they were lining up with the Andaman Islands and in the Indian Ocean. So anyways, as I got into 20, 30, 40 alignments, I said, okay, all right. These things are aligning with, basically extinct volcanoes, super calderas, or active volcanoes. And the pyramids in Egypt and the Giza Plateau, Saqqara, Abusir pyramids, they all line up with the Hawaiian hotspot. And then if you go further south from the Giza Plateau, you end up in I think it's I forget the African country right now, but there's a mountain there that also it's like a line, But anyways, you stick a yarn needle through the globe, and you come out with the Hawaiian hotspot. So it's okay. What is the Hawaiian hotspot doing, right? So it's like it's a magma relief valve for the planet on the Pacific Ocean. Now the Pacific Ocean, you get the Ring of Fire. Goes around the whole, the outskirts of the ocean, really. And then you have almost right smack in the center of the Ring of Fire, you have this big, opening, and it's a constant erupting volcano, 24, 7 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you get the, this thing's dribbling out magma. Now, last year was very impressive. Last year we had all the planets lining up on one side of the sun, and we were, so if you put yourself in that, if you can just envision all the planets on one side of the sun, not completely in a line, but pretty close, they were staggered around. So we were in a gravitational highway, really, a real boost in gravitational energy, and the moon and the Earth and the Moon was in that stream from the larger planets, Jupiter, Saturn, you got Mars, and you still have the other ones, on the inner asteroid belt, Venus and Mercury, and of course the other planets going further out. But essentially, you're in a larger gravitational tug. Now, last year you had a 3,000% increase in volcanic activity across the globe, seismic activity. Everything went up 3,000%. So what I did was I looked at the data, and every time all the planets line up on one side of the sun, it's like clockwork. You get a 3,000 to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000% increase in volcanic activity, seismic activity across the globe. So if you're a planet builder, right, what's your biggest challenge on Earth? And it's dealing with the external forces that are out there in the inner and outer solar system. And also you have it's a living planet. It's got a core that's liquid. It's got a lot of pressure. It's constantly it's like it's constantly what do you call it, taking down the old tectonic plates and pushing up new magma, at the zones, what do you call them, the tectonic plate zones. You got the submergent and divergent tectonic plate zones, and you have the the ones in the center of the oceans. They're actually the newest magma coming up. So the actual plates themselves go from east to west, say from the Atlantic Ocean. I think it goes 3 inches or a couple inches, 2 inches to the east, or 2 inches to the west, and 3 to 4 inches to the east. So, but anyways, all that being said, what I did was I realized that there was what is supplying the gravitational energy? It's just, for the most part, if you take the planet and just look at it without any external forces, it's just static gravitational field. Okay, it's just a static gravitational field and possibly a static magnetic field. But then you step off the planet. What's the first thing you're traveling out? What's the first thing you're going to land on? Is the moon. All right. Now there's a huge gravitational influence there, and what I came to believe and what I've understood is that the moon is lensing The moon is, a gravitational energy supply. All right. So it's a tug of war between Earth and the moon, back and forth. And the pyramids are actually lenses, the gravitational lenses, and they concentrate as we spin through the moon's gravitational field. There's when the pyramids actually spin through it. And a lot of these planets are in the Orion configuration, dog-shaped configuration. If you can step up and look down on that, it's part of the Fibonacci sequence. Okay, so you got the big one. The big one hits the gravitational field of the moon first, then the middle one, and then the small one, and that creates a huge rotating vortex in the gravity world. And that's below the plates, and it's actually a focal point that's being created by this movement, and it basically controls and locks in big, large, enormous magma currents. And one of the largest magma currents is right underneath the Hawaiian hotspot. So it's kind of just it's in there, and it's locked in to this energy system that we're involved in. It's like perpetual motion. It doesn't dissipate, But
how does it recharge? What do you mean the recharge? How does it slow it down?
How does it slow what down?
What retards, that word? Could you stop on that a little bit and explain that, please?
I'm not sure if I meant to say retards, but what it does is we rotate into the gravitational field, okay, of the moon, okay, and then if you look at the energy, the larger pyramid goes first, then the second, and the third, and it creates a gravitational vortex. And what that does is it lowers the gravitational field under the Hawaiian hotspot, and it allows the magma to vent out. Any pressure on that side of the planet is able to dribble out and relieve the magma pressure. Now, that all being said, you saw are you both out on Hawaii? You're both out there?
Wait, so that's a gravitard.
We're in Maui.
That's really a gravitard. It retards the effect of gravity. I do understand that.
Okay.
It's a good word.
Yeah. And
all right.
We're in Maui. Yeah. We're in Maui, Hawaii. So this is especially of interest to us.
All
okay,
right.
So continue. Go ahead.
So as we, of course, you didn't hear this on the mainstream news media or anything, but the planets on the other side created a large gravitational influence on the planet, and it increased the magma pressure, which is repeatable, observable data by the 3,000% increase. So what the planet builders did is they created the system so we have really big external forces that we go through every 20, 30, 40 years. This happens when you have all the planets on one side of the sun. This constant erupting volcano, which is now Hawaii, allows that increase in volcanic activity to flow out of that Hawaiian hotspot. So if just say they, you got rid of the pyramids in the Giza Plateau because they were, interrupting the view of some sultan over there, you would have a major problem on this planet if you couldn't release an increase of magma pressure inside the Earth's crust. So what this does, it takes any increase in the normal pressure. I mean, there's always a little flow here and there, but when you get, not to repeat myself, once you get a increase in external gravitational field, that transfers into heat energy, and you're going to have, a release of pressure. So if it comes out the Hawaiian hotspot, that's good. It's not good for the people that are living right there, next to Kilauea, but for the rest of the planet, it's good because it prevents large tectonic plate slips where if they're under the ocean, you're going to have enormous tsunamis and nobody's going to get a good night's sleep for a long time, so until you get back out of that alignment. So that all being said, that's what I came to find out, that's what I come to believe. And I have an equation that also ties in the displacement properties of a pyramid and how it lowers the gravitational field on the other side of the planet. Now, we see this activity day in and day out. The moon has 2 high tides, right? Yeah, I mean, the planet has 2 high tides a day. You have a moon high tide, and 180 degrees away from the moon, on the planet, you have a moonless high tide, approximately the same time. So, in essence, the Barry Center gets, the Barry Center is the center of the gravitational field on a static planet, that doesn't have any external forces. Now, with the moon, you have an external forces, and it's going to pull the gravitational field, the bubble, if you will, whatever you got to use to visualize, it's going to pull that bubble closer to the moon, and it's going to, when you do that, when you pull the gravitational field towards the moon, you lower the gravitational field on the opposite side of the planet, and this is how the moon creates a moonless high tide when it's 180 degrees opposed to it, and this is how you have these pyramids are able to more or less lower the gravitational field on these particular alignments. Now, now,
wait. Let me just get the formula. So for there's a formula that you can reduce gravity by wherever the moon is no longer pulling. It's like there's something about proximity. That's it. That's the formula. Proximity. Gravity's a function of proximity. All other things being held constant.
You could say that. Yeah, you gotta have the gravitational constant. Like my equations, it's AMC squared times L divided by dB. So A is the angle, okay, of the mass, right? And M is the mass in tons. All right. So you could do this. I'll get back to that in a second. But and then C is the speed of light squared, just to give it an energy. And then L is the lunar angle over whatever it is that you're measuring. So if you take the Great Pyramid of Giza and you plug this formula into it, okay, all the measurements, the weights, and the angles and everything, then you have exactly what this pyramid can displace in metric tons, and that is plugged in to underneath the Hawaiian hotspot. Okay, so you're basically this is the measurement of how much magma or how much gravitational energy this thing can manipulate and allow magma to continue to vent out of the Hawaiian hotspot.
Wow. That's beautiful. It's empirically testable. I love it. That's great.
All right. Now you can go on we just getting out of the hurricane season in the northern hemisphere here, and there's wind maps. I think it's I'll send you the website later on, but if you have a large hurricane, right, Cat 5, Cat 4 hurricane, if you go onto these real-time wind maps screens that they have on the internet, and you can grab the globe and you spin it around 180 degrees, it will have a sister hurricane there or a typhoon. Usually, like say, most popular places is we get the hurricanes on the eastern seaboard of the United States and the Bahamas or whatever, and that location of the planet actually lines up with the South China Sea. And they have a lot of typhoons up there also. So the last couple of large storms going through this particular hurricane season, you could look at hurricane. I forget the name of the ones that I was looking at, but there were big hurricanes, Cat 5 hurricane, and then you spun the globe around. You had a typhoon that was completely locked in. Wow. They were both locked into each other, 180 degrees opposed to each other on the same approximate latitude. Now, the planet's a soup sandwich. I get people think we're dealing with first surface mirrors and laser beams. It's not. There's a lot of other stuff going on. So it's not. A lot of times you might be 1,000 miles south of where the same latitude is of one particular storm or one particular pyramid lining up with a volcano, but some of them are pretty spot on. Now, as we go through the step back and, so I have more evidence in the 180 theory. I got a YouTube channel. I'm always pushing the 180 theory, trying to get it out. I'm at the level where I've put my work in and got rejected because I used pyramid in my explanation of gravity. So, but that all being said, I'm at the level where I'm going to be. Hopefully, I'll get published, and in the journal Nature out of London, and so it'll legitimize what I'm talking about, because the alignments you can't ignore the repeatable, observable evidences of the moon, of storms lining up with each other, the moon and the high tide and low tide, or you have a high moon tide and a high moonless tide. So, I mean, these things all line up. So you have physical, repeatable evidence that backs up this 180 theory. Absolutely. And, eventually you just you're going to look ridiculous arguing against it, So that's where we're going.
Right. So there's two parts here. The sub-argument is that the pyramids can accurately do certain things, and that's you can measure that and say whether or not in test cases that's true. So you've provided for two different hypotheses, really, both of which can be separately tested.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Spot on. Couldn't have said it better. So there's other things that the pyramids do. Like if you think of okay, you build a pyramid on a flat area, and you have the moon. Your pyramid's rotating through the moon, and you're basically increasing the gravitational field in that localized area where this pyramid's built. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of the people did, in areas around the globe, is this was a way of managing ground table water, right? You would pull the ground table water. The ground table water has a tide on its own that's affected by the moon also. The tables of the water under your feet go up and down, same as the ocean does, all right? So now if you have a denser gravitational field, it's going to pull the water up even higher and fill in a lot more cavities, aquifers, and tributaries and things of that nature. So the area that you've planned to live in is going to have a good supply of water. So there's primaries, secondaries, and third reasons for having pyramids. So in essence, that's one another purpose of a pyramid. The other purpose of a pyramid is it actually raises the land it's built on, which you think in your mind, it's like, well, wait a minute, you're putting this large thing on, this large mass on the crust of the earth. Wouldn't it sink? And it's like, well, not really, because you're increasing the gravitational tug of the moon. It's the gravitational tug of the moon is connecting to this thing and trying to pull it to the moon, if you will. Lift it off the surface of the earth. So, in essence, if you go around the world, the globe, wherever these pyramids are built, they're higher than the surrounding area. So over time, they do rise. And most pyramids, like the Shen pyramids, they said they found 2-3 years ago, they discovered a freshwater ocean under them. And also under the Sahara in Egypt, the Giza Plateau is an enormous freshwater ocean under those pyramids also.
How fast do they rise? How many feet per millennia?
Well, I couldn't tell you, but this would be good stuff. If we get 100 scientists at the university level in MIT, we could give them something to do, And they can work it all out. They can put the material science together. Well, whatever the crust composition is, and first the temperature and the alignment of or where you are on the latitudes. Because the latitudes are important, because the moon only has a 6-degree angle to it around the Earth.
There's different centrifugal forces on the places near the equator than the poles, because it's further from the center.
Right. Yeah, you have the centrifugal forces. You have the magnetic fields that come out of the equatorial region and flow back up to the poles, and the gravitational energy also has some kind of a flow like that also. So in a nutshell, that's basically where I'm at with the pyramids, and and I think it's spot on. I'm the only guy out there with an equation, and a functional, a realistic reason why you would go to. Some of these pyramids are just beyond everything. We still couldn't put these things together today, and at the pace that they said they were put together. So, and maybe not even that. So, 2.5 million, stones, 6 million tons. Unless I get that reversed, but either way, it's mind-boggling when you look at the accuracy of something.
Who built them in your theory? Who built this? And there's a whole system of pyramids across the planet.
Right.
Are you talking about the Anunnaki, like Sitchins? Because that's who we
study. Well, I would normally go with the Anunnaki because they're 480,000-year-old society. They're obviously technologically advanced, but I'm looking at the timelines, and I'm looking at the ice samples that they've pulled, and they show that for like almost a million years, it's been 100,000-year ice age followed by a 13,000-year, approximate interglacial period. So I think that all being said, I think that timeline to me is the rebuilding of the pyramids. So I think the pyramids were rebuilt back a million years ago, and it was before the Anunnaki. Now, you go to if you go to forbidden archaeology with I always forget his name.
Cremo,
Michael Cremo, right?
Yes,
and how many archaeologists have lost their jobs by printing out what they found, by publishing what they found, and been run out of town, tarred and feathered, careers ruined, because they found modern man at the same level of dinosaurs, even deeper. They've got out in California, they've got skeletal remains of modern human beings under 20 feet of slate, and that the only possibility is this 300 million year old human beings there. So I think maybe we're a pit stop for technologically advanced societies. They come, it sounds like everybody's obsessed with gold. It's gold this and gold that. Mm-hmm. And the women. Let's not forget the women. Read the story.
We have good women here on the earth. Come and shop.
That's right.
Take you home with you.
You get a decent slice of pizza,
we know that the
You're breaking up, honey. Slow down. Try again.
The Romanian and Bosnian pyramids are way older than.
So try again, honey. You're breaking up. I'm not sure.
I quit.
No, try again. Try again, honey. Come on, we can't quit. We got 2 hours show.
The survivors from a continent in the Atlantic were all over what we call Europe, way before the Anunnaki arrived 450,000 years ago. In Bosnia, Romania, Bulgaria, there are way bigger, way older pyramids, and evidence of way bigger beings.
Right. Agree.
Using those pyramids. And just remember, think of Ralph Nader and Donald Trump giving a history of the United States. That's how each of these different records that we have, even from the Anunnaki, differ from one another. They're all pushing their own trip and putting others down.
Exactly. So, it seems to be, in this dimension, there's always this yin and the yang going on. No matter how technologically advanced these people get, there's a war. It's like, somebody's going against something. You read the Vimana, India's records of history. There's, the wars of the gods, and then the Anunnaki, Enlil, and Enki, and it just people just can't seem to get along, So anyway,
it seems like they can get along.
Yes, can't get along. So
it seems that we have programmed into us what we call dominator consciousness, that people are obsessed with hierarchy in a very painful way, and the rebellion of Ninmah. After the men had nuked themselves practically to extinction, was, hey, we don't have to do that.
Right, exactly. It's like, stop doing the same thing over and over again. There seems to be, we can see it even in our lifetime. People are forgetting history. They're like, we went down this path before. It doesn't end well for anybody, And then, you have the local idiot gets into power, and well, how did that happen?
Yeah.
It's scary, It's like, oh my
it's
God,
scary.
who are these people, So, I think.
Well, let's look at this. So, let's kind of summarize, because we went through a lot. So we have this. Probably the Anunnaki came, but all this is already established throughout the cosmos, these systems of pyramids. So somebody much older that's going around, and they're looking at these systems, these planets that are unstable, and they say, well, I'm just guessing. It'd be nice to colonize that one, but we got to put these stabilizers in. And then the moon is part of this stabilizing system. What's your theory on the moon? What happened, honey? Here, take this. Oh. Okay, I'm going to have him keep talking. I got to get it back on. Here, take this, go to the other room. Take this. You got to take this too. Okay, go in the other room.
You okay?
Yeah, I just, I don't know when I dropped out. I was talking, and then I realized the phone was blank. And so now I've got Janet's phone.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So, there's a lot. What's good is that, you got the clay tablets. You have the Ramana, the Indian culture. There's the Aborigines. You have the a lot of the Central South American Mayan cultures. So there is scattered historical remnants of life on Earth, and some history and who was in power, and but it seems to be this big folly. Like we always we rise to this huge technological advanced level of superiority, only just to go right back to hunter-gatherer again. And it might be a seasonal thing. Like if you think of the ice ages, like right now we're prospering, it's warm, almost it's getting to the point where 100% of the planet is occupied, and in an ice age you're down to like maybe 10%. So you don't have all that ability to expand the empire, and a lot of the species die off, or they get whittled down. There's evidence of big bottlenecks throughout all the species. They go right down to single digit numbers. Some of them, even humanity, has gone down to under like 50,000. I think they've proven that. So just throwing that out as an idea, like it might. Like if you're going to set up a planet Earth, you would want, and you're aware of humanity, you're aware of species and what they do, and they breed and they keep breeding until something comes in from the outside and stops it, or throttles it. So this might be this is a divine planet. It's of very high intelligence, and basically built by the gods, really, if you really get into the ramifications of anything, but of everything. So you create a species, and what do? You put a thermostat on it, right? Okay, we're gonna throw an ice age in here to throttle everything down, so they just don't, dig everything out of the core of the planet and, completely destroy the place. So if you go into an ice age, it just shuts down everything, it's slow.
Right.
It's slow. It's a slow process. It's not like you wake up and it's like, 200 below zero, it's a slow thing, but at the same time, it's a necessary from an engineering, point of view, planetary engineering.
Well, that makes sense.
Point of view, you need to shut it down. It's just like the seasons. You garden, you do your gardening, you plant, you sow the seeds, you take care of it, you get the vegetables, the fruit, and then it goes into hibernation. It just shuts down. So it's a seasonal thing on the planet, and you don't hear it. People just don't discuss the ice age. I don't know if it's on the pay no never mind list, like the moon. I don't know what it is, but they just don't want to talk about it.
Right?
Maybe because they don't understand it.
Well, when do you think it's coming again? Do you have a timeline on that?
This is where the other book. Excuse me, sorry to cut you off, but this is where the other book comes in. There is something about the moon, and that is the proverbial thermostat. Okay, so the tilt of the Earth is based on the ice-water ratios, and the drag and slip between the Earth and the Moon's gravitational field is what is in play here. So so we'll go through this. We're going to go through this interglacial period. We're going to melt. I don't know if you're going to melt all the ice, but you might go into a total liquid planet. But as that's proceeding, the tilt will be changing. Okay. Now, so what happens is the tilt changes, and as the tilt changes, you can see the effects right now with just the what do you call it? We just went through the equinox, right? I mean, you can see the sun setting lower and lower in the sky if you're in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah,
obviously it's gone. So you see this real small deviation in the sun in the sky, and you see the seasons change. Now, just imagine you go to a 90-degree tilt on the Earth, like Uranus, okay, and you get 3 months of just total darkness on one pole, and three months of light on another pole, and then you're swapping around. And 6 months later, the other side's getting. And what we refer to that is it's the ice age. It's ice building mode. Gobekli Tepe actually is which I've come to believe is actually what was used to monitor these extreme tilts that we go through. So in essence, the moon, for all intent and purpose, controls the tilt of the Earth based on the ice and water ratio. So as the more liquid, the more drag. The Earth is tilting right now. You're going to a lower tilt. It's only by 100 feet a year, but it's actually going towards the equator. We're losing daylight or up north as we speak, but it's only 100. But as the oceans get bigger and bigger, that will also increase in time exponentially, and you'll start getting into the northern latitudes, or the higher latitudes, I should say, because you're talking about the south and the north. That both latitudes, higher latitudes, will be getting cooler and cooler and cooler because there's less and less sunlight. And you go into an ice age for quite a long time. And once you hit the what we call is the glacial maximum, you will start tilting back towards a 23.5 degree tilt that we have today. So you'll come back into that. And unbeknownst to the scientific community, the moon is not drifting away. The moon is moving away from the Earth based on the size of the ocean. So as the ocean girth gets bigger, the moon gets further and further away based on the ocean. Now, when the ocean sinks 300, 400, 500 feet, and you have these giant glaciers at the top of the poles again, the moon will come back closer to the Earth. All right, it'll pull it back in closer. So they're we're not going to lose the moon, and that's the latest theory that the scientific community is putting out, that the moon's going to drift away and we're going to lose it somehow. But again, this place, the planet was built with a purpose. It wasn't just happened out of chance, And that all being said, I discovered there was images on the moon. There's another part of the. If you read the book.
Wait. I want to hear those too, but first I want to focus on what Janet was asking: is what is the speed or the range of time it takes to go to this condition where there's the interglacial here, and how long does that? Period? How big? How long?
Well, if you look at the ice core samples. And, they're the only things we got to go on. And they show an average of 10,000 years to 13,000 years. There's 3 or 4 13,000 year interglacial periods. There's a couple of 9s, a couple of 10s, a couple of 14s. So I think we're at I believe that we're pretty close to the 13,000 year. I think we've passed the 13,000 year mark. So we're close, but what is the exception to this particular interglacial period is the Younger Dryas period. Now, what happened in the Younger Dryas period is, it's anybody's guess. You got some great scientists out there, Randall Cunningham, I think his name is, and Graham Hancock came out with a good scenario. There's other people have some scenarios about it, but whatever it is that what you have to do is you have to factor in that 1,500 years of, I think it was 1,200 to 1,500 years in the Younger Dryas periods where the ice age came back. Okay, so when you go into a normal interglacial period, you're in the big melt. You're just thawing for 13,000 years straight. Okay? Now, for whatever reason, we had the Younger Dryas period happened, and it stalled the big melt for about 1,200 years. So, in essence, for this physical exchange between the Earth and the Moon's ice-water ratio had been stalled. So we might end up getting another 1,000 years in this particular interglacial period. So, we could be one of those interglacial periods that you have the 14,500 year interglacial period, than the other previous interglacial periods that only lasted 13,000 to 13,500. So that's.
So you said something appears to have interfered with the normal cycle. So we have perhaps a more intelligent species that is intervening because the planet is full of people. Perhaps.
Well, it's possible, but the point is the Younger Dryas period was like a mini ice age, so it stalled the melting. So what that did was it stalled the increase in water on the planet, which in turn stalls the tilt change. Okay, as the oceans get larger and larger and larger, the tilt starts to change on the Earth based on the Earth-Moon relationship. So,
it occurs to me that if you were measuring a liquid in an experiment on the Moon and Mars, which may be within our grasp, we could tell by how the water in those places is affected before the effects are fully found on Earth.
Okay.
And so that you could actually create if that hasn't already happened, a warning system so that you can do things like moving back from the coastlines and to higher ground when that's appropriate, and understanding the cycle in which you're caught far enough in advance that you can use your technology to adapt.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, this is great.
Absolutely. Like, you can, it's an awesome discussion. You look at like they think that they say that the ocean should be a lot higher, right? But what they've come to find out is like when the ice melts on the poles and it goes into the ocean gets heavier. Well, when the ocean gets heavier, it pushes on the plates that the floor of the ocean, right? So it squeezes. So in essence, like, you put your belt on and you're pulling it tight around your waist. That's what's going on now. And what's going on top of all that? So you got the circumference of the planet at the floor of the ocean is getting tighter. Okay, the poles themselves, because of the liberation of trillions of tons of ice, the polar caps are actually rising. Okay, so we're going from pumpkin shape to spherical shape. I think we're probably almost there, anyways. But I think we're a spherical planet now, where we, through the ice age with the trillions of tons of ice on the poles, you became a pumpkin shape, and more or less you squished the planet down, and the circumference at the equator actually grew. So you're almost like a frisbee, you know what I mean? Something like that. Just over exaggerate, just to give you a visual. But so you have this tremendous amount of energy moving. It's over huge blocks of time. Okay, and that's what I wanted.
The amount of time it would take for the planet to rotate on its own axis then would vary, and as closer the planet came to spherism and less pumpkin-shapedism, the faster it would rotate. The days would be faster.
Well, the moon's a break also. If the moon wasn't here, we'd have like 10-hour days. So as you know, we're spinning 1,100 some odd miles at the equator, and the moon is traveling 300 miles less than we are. Okay, so that's why we're rotating through the moon's gravitational field. But in essence, that's like a disc brake. It's a disc brake
hold
caliper.
One moment. We're at the top of the hour. We're on the break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. See you in 5.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
We're in a narco-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a civil majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
Come
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix, and I'm your host. I don't get feedback. I'm your host, Janet Kara Lessin. My co-host is Dr. Sasha Lessin. Our producer is Thomas Becker, and we're on Revolution Radio Studio B, and our guest is John Shaughnessy. And I wanted to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on revolution.radio and make your donation. We really rely on your donations. You help us stay on the air and bring to you all these wonderful shows. So please remember to be generous and go over and donate what you can, because we need the donations. So before we get back, just to remind you, the books are Pyramid Gravity Force, How the Earth's Pyramids Work, and there's something about the moon, and then John has a new book coming out. Dr. Lessin, are you back?
Yes. Can you
Where
hear
are
me?
you, dear?
Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I am hoping that this time we can think about, given the time of changes we can expect here, how an intelligent species that was coordinating its activities might adapt to these forces that are way beyond our general knowledge. I would also point out that Sala indicates that the Navy scientists may really know a lot more than the academic scientists about what's really coming down, and that they actually have experiences directly on the moon, and they've gotten a lot of scientific talent that they keep for themselves. I'd certainly be interested, John, in you responding to that thought too.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, you don't want to panic anybody, and what I'm saying is kind of, you could, it's just the reality of living on Earth, and it has to go into, hibernation, just to save itself, to regenerate itself. So you accept that, and, hello?
I think we're looking at a civilization that was, they came in, they were able to analyze our system here. So this is a spacefaring civilization. So perhaps in their reality, their cosmology, whenever a planet would go into this phase, they would just move populations. Mm-hmm. So, maybe that's something that might be happening. We're just a bunch of sheep and cattle, and, we're not being aware of what's coming. But maybe when it gets to that phase, they'll just take us and move us off the planet. Hopefully there's somebody conscious observing this whole system.
Well, we could.
I'd like to think that
it could be just a smooth transition from the population, instead of increasing, just starts to decrease. It could be just as simple as that, and you just lose. The population drops off, not from horrific events, but it just you're not producing as many babies, we'll put it that way, so it's going to, it could, more population control, more education in that area, and then over time it's, you go back into a level where it's more sustainable, where you're not exhausting the natural resources that in some cases take billions of years to, or hundreds of millions of years to actually come into existence. So,
we have evidence of places like Africa, where they apparently had a population in the millions, and there's no sign of any major devastation or a bunch of corpses everywhere. So maybe they got relocated. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
in the millions.
It's possible. Yeah. Anything's possible. I mean, we're just, if you just look at the splendor of it all, and all the the history that we have with the Sumerian tablets, the ancient leftover technologically advanced megaliths all over the planet, like these pyramids. They're just out of time. You go into the temples of Egypt, and some of the works down in Central and South America that's left over from Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, the H blocks. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. South Africa, there's you have the circles down there, and they're all like material objects out of time. They just don't belong in this timeline, or in this dimension. But they're here, and it's evidence, irrefutable evidence. Like we were talking earlier, that you have, Michael Cremo and Forbidden Archaeology. You get, these people have been down here. We've been down here 400, 500 million years. Probably even longer. Yeah. Who knows? I
would say that the pyramids are also teaching machines, that they, by their very architecture and the mathematics implied in their architecture and construction, that human beings, or any beings that contemplate the structure and what's implied in that structure can, by their own genius, deduce, as you've done, things about the universe. And also, we observe things and we have the ability, even though we don't know how they are made to function, we have the inventive ability to put it together. You got to think that all this is divine plan, including, if you free yourself from temporality, the possibility that we've been given ourselves a message, or as A.R. Borden's people say, that time, space can be manipulated so disasters don't occur. Those are a couple of hypotheses that are interesting. And when we get alternate hypotheses, my usual method is to say, what if they each had something to contribute and they're not mutually exclusive at all? Anyway, toss that around if you would.
Okay, I like it. It's the undying soul. I hope they've gotten the planet back, getting together, and it's going into glacial period as we're speaking. So when I pass on, I can, be born into on another planet and enjoy something else. Just elevating the consciousness of the soul, I think, is the ultimate goal, I think, of every being. And eventually you get to at such a higher state, you don't have to keep going through all these, trials and tribulations and experiences unless you want to, it's entirely up to you, But it's like, it's like the images on the moon. I found some images on the moon. We're talking images that are 1,000 miles wide, 666 miles wide, the face of a man with perfect geometry of lips, eyes, the globe, the average globe, the school globe you have when you were in college or high school.
Yeah.
It's got that half C clip that holds it. There's actually that C is actually on the moon, and there's black dots on where the tilt of the Earth goes and during different evolutions of the larger ages, So in essence, So what I come to find out was that we're in the age of and there's two zodiac symbols up on the moon, and you're gonna freak when I tell you. It's the same down here, right? As above, so below. You got Cancer, the crab, up on the moon, and you have Capricorn, the sea goat, up on the moon. All right, so the Capricorn, the sea goat is on the lower part of the moon, and the crab is on the top part of the moon. You also have the face of a cobra. And these are all in my book. You can go to my website, my YouTube channels, check that all out. And you have Khonsu, the creator god, Amun Ra, gave his only begotten son, Khonsu, the moon to drive. So he's also up on the moon, doing a good job driving it, I might add. But so it's these are observable evidences that some people can see them, some people can't. Not everybody can see these images, but once you see them, you can't unsee them. And it's like, why? And so it'd be like, well, why? This is what I was perplexed by, because I discovered the images, and I go, well, what on God's? Why in the world would anybody go through all that trouble to put these giant images on the moon? And that, not like 20 years ago, you had Pizza Hut or Domino's. They were going to put their logo up on the moon. They actually got bids in from aerospace industries that said they could do it, but the logo is going to be 1,000 miles long. It's going to cost like $10 billion. So, they were going to etch it with the laser beam. Put Domino's logo. It's just the arrogance. Never mind the utter arrogance of these people. But I mean, this is what. So even with our simplistic human minds, we come up with, we said, oh, well, we'll do it if the price is right. We'll do anything, So, but anyway, so you can see these images up on the moon, and the geometry is just fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I hope you get a chance to check them out. And I actually took a lot of the pictures with my telescope, my iPhone, and I had blue filters, red filters, green filters. And blue filters seem to bring out the images better than just plain white. But if you can see them with the naked eye on a moonrise. Now, if you're by the ocean, which you're in Maui, right? It's like
Yes.
I just wanted to go to. I think Maui's got the best windsurfing on the planet. I used to be a windsurfer.
Oh, cool.
I still can do it, but I don't think I'd ever come back after I went out. It'd be it. But so I don't do it anymore. It's a young man's sport. But anyways, long story short, if you watch the moon come up out of the ocean, it's actually we're rotating into it, but just for point of saying, the atmosphere lenses the moon, so it looks enormous when it's right on the horizon. Absolutely giant, but that's the lensing effect of the atmosphere. It's actually acting like a magnifying glass. And you can see these images, with the naked eye. Now, if you don't have that, if you're not in the ocean and things of that nature, you can just a cheap pair of binoculars, you'll be able to see these things that I'm talking about. But once you map the images in your mind at any time, you can see the image. You can see the images just going on Google Moon, and there's like a couple of 100 million images of the moon. You'll see these images plain as day. So once you train your eye to see these things, you'll see them right away. So there's a cobra head up there. So anyways, all of this is ties back into the tilt. So for the most part, you have one giant clock on the planet. That's precession. If we didn't have the planetary wobble that gives us a different zodiac symbol every 2,600 years roughly, we wouldn't have any real reference of time other than just going around the sun 1 year. That would be the only reference of time. So that wobble was put into the planet on purpose to give us that measurement of time. And the other measurement of time in my book is the moon itself. And as the tilts change in the moon, so does the orientation of the images. So right now we're in the age of Capricorn and Man, right? They're straight up. They're straight up. Okay, so you're looking at them straight up, standing straight, upright. And the Ice Age is known as the Age of Cobra and the Crab. So if you look at the ancient stories of these two symbols, right, of the sea goat, and the sea goat one is with the little, they had little babies in the ocean, little baby sea goats swam to land, got legs, grew legs, and they're they resemble the goats of today, okay, the big horns and things of that nature, different types of goats and in the goat family. But that all being said, when you're in the age of, so there's two ages now. I'm splitting them. I'm throwing out all the other ages. You got the interglacial age is the man and the sea goat, and then the ice age is the crab and the cobra. So it's so you're in the prosperous time. Waters, the water's rising. The sea goat goes to land. If you look into the story behind that image of that zodiac symbol, and then of course you have the face of man is standing straight up. Now, as we go into the tilt, our orientation of those images will change, and what will be upright during the Ice Age will be the crab and the cobra. Now, the crab, in essence, it eats as the tide goes out. So, in essence, as a tide comes in, it's like the huge time tide, if you will, of the interglacial period. Everything's melting. The tide is just going in with flooding, the lower seaports and the oceans are rising. And then when the moon rotates or we rotate with it, we have the images of the crab and the cobra. Now the cobra, the essence of a cobra and what do you call it? A crab is they're scavengers, right? I mean, we're not in the land of plenty anymore. It's a tough time on Earth. If you go to Göbekli Tepe, they have a city up there about 10 miles away from it where 2,000 people actually lived underground. So we're talking about a very hostile environment in certain locations on the planet. And that all being said, I don't want to get focused in on that one, but so there's some symbol. The symbolism tells you where you are. So if you're looking at the moon, you're aware of these teachings. You can tell what age you're in. You're in this age. Now, some of the biggest steles out of Egypt are with Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and they have this symbol of they call it the sun. It's not the sun, it's the moon. There's a cobra head on the moon. This is where the cobra head. There's actually a cobra head on the moon. There's a cobra head on the headdresses of all the pharaohs and the queens.
Wow.
So the essence of the cobra is it rocks back and forth. Okay, now there's seasons. There's 25,000 years. It's precession. When you're in the Ice Age, you still have a 26,000 year. I call it, rounded off to 26. It's 27, 25, 700, whatever. But it's in essence, it's 26,000 years roughly, and you'll have those lines coming down in those stellies, rocking back and forth through the precession. So there's a tangible connection between there's a tangible connection between these stellies and these large ages we go through. Now, once we go into the Ice Ages, the equatorial region will become lush again, which everybody knows. Recently, they put out more evidence that Africa was a lush, green environment, like it's almost like the rainforest down the Amazon. So that will be the new Amazon. Those localized areas. The only problem is like you got glaciers not too far away. You got 1,000 miles north. You might have glaciers coming. You got glaciers coming down over Europe, but in that tiny little band around the equator, well, not maybe latitude 20 up to latitude 20 or whatever. You'll have the thing. Now, there's people already out there speculating about the coming Ice Age, and they're in these locations, and they're buying up these locations, and they're having wars in these locations, moving people out. Everybody's like, so there's a lot of people. There are people that are privy to what I'm talking about on the planet that not exactly what I'm, talking about, like in my book and the moon images and things of that nature, but they know that, the amount of area on the planet is going to be very small compared to what it is right now. That's going to be inhabitable.
We've heard that people are building a band of trees across the Maghreb in just the area you're saying, exactly what you're saying, that they're actually planting trees, getting ready.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you have, but I think the intelligent lives, beings, that put this all together, I think it's a very slow process. I think if people think it's just going to snap and you're going to go into an ice age overnight, it's not. I don't think it's going to happen that way. But you never know, right? It doesn't hurt you to be a little. It doesn't hurt you to. What's that?
We have those animals that have food frozen in their mouths. They were frozen as they were eating, so something happened.
Yeah, that's the Younger Dryas period. Now, it could have been a shift of the tilt went back the other way, and they just flash frozen within hours. Those woolly mammoths.
Honey, you're breathing into the mic. You're back from the mic, honey. Yeah. Okay, so, go ahead. Did you have more questions, Sasha?
Yeah, wait, I moved back from the mic. Is that better?
Yeah, you were breathing. We thought we had a stalker. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
It's a big hurricane anyways,
Yeah, something.
So anyway, everything is moving so fast. I think the best you can do is be nice to the people in your life right now and be a good person and love yourself and treat everybody with respect.
That's it. We're down here to grow spiritually. I mean, that's what I've come to believe anyways. It's just you're down here to grow spiritually. You get these trying events in your life, and you choose an avenue, you choose a road. It's based on which way is going to give me a higher spiritual understanding or a more spiritual what do you call it, experience, so I think it's like but it's tough. I mean, some decisions are very tough. Like, we're geared to take the least troublesome way and the least path of resistance, the safest way. But some people find themselves in a very, very, they're in the focal point, thrusted in the focal point, and they're in very dangerous situations, and they have to follow it through and basically work through the fear and have faith, and that there is, you are a soul. You're not going to die. You'll come back. It's immortal. It goes on. But it's kind of getting off the topic of the moon. And the
in a way, this is the topic. This really is the topic. I would suggest that that empathizing with the pain and suffering of those who are suffering is part of the process. Is part of the educational process to show us what things challenge us enough to face and deal with. Rininger and others say it's leading us to a technological point where we can actually adapt and predict and actually employ formulas like the ones you've developed and work them out so that people can move and adapt in an intelligent way using their minds and the technology that we've been forced to adapt because we're warring with each other, but forced to adapt it to the survival of humanity. And rather than being depressed by the way things are, if we can embrace it as perfect. Imagine we created this for ourselves, for humanity, for the cosmos to learn, and then it's groovy because you made it for you. So whether it's true or not, it gives you a good reference point, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, spot on. I think, great analogy there. Yes, yeah, it's it's a beautiful life, and there's a lot of choices you can make, and it's just amazing. Every day's an adventure. It really is. It's just what's going to happen today, and you don't know. Sometimes you just get out there and do the best you can, and this is it. It's just a process. It's the soul having a human experience, right? We've heard that before, and that's what it's all about, I think. And it's the technology's there, we're burning a lot of things. We're still in the fossil fuel economy, and it is expediting the melting of the ice caps. And what I noticed is, I was looking at the timelines in these ice samples, and I said, well, these people did real good. There was one particular society that they had a 16-year interglacial period. I said, these people must have been some spiritual gurus. They were very high. They weren't produce, consume mentality. They were very spiritual, and they lived in the confines of what the planet offered. And, they weren't digging for the gold and, looking for, to manufacture stuff and things of that nature. So there are, there is some, I think it's just different psychologies. If you look at how the last 2 centuries, where 100 years ago we were on horseback, and now we got super highways. 100 years later, it's not a lot of time, I mean, the Wright brothers were just jumping off a hill, and this thing that would, that surely kill them if the wind came, So, or Wilbur. And then next thing you know, we're getting on a plane to London, going over the Atlantic Ocean at 700 miles an hour with 300 people on it, I mean, it's just unbelievable, Yeah,
there's something about us it's very creative, and I think it's because we are shorter lived that somehow that accelerates our ability to invent and create. The Anunnaki lived to be thousands of years old, and here we are. Right. Barely given. I guess we're given 120 years, and so we have to do it within our 120 years. Yeah. Which rarely anybody reaches that. So I was struck by something you said that sparked a thought in me. So
Abraham was
our
900
previous cultures.
Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So our previous cultures were not digging like they were more earth-centered and respectful of the earth, I guess, because this latest generation of humanoids is like destroying the planet, like digging and fracking and taking down mountaintops and doing all this stuff.
Scorch and burn. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't see any indicators in the soils. You're doing these samples right down. I worked at Penn State. We used to have them. They were like hundreds of feet long. You dig into a core, and they could pull it back out, and you get all different levels going back, millions of years.
Right.
So, anyway, the previous civilization, the Anunnaki, whoever it was, they were at least a level 1 or 2 or 3 in the Cartership level, based on their technology. Right. So we're back to a level 0, maybe a -1.
In 100 years, I think we're going to be a 1 if we're lucky. We don't blow ourselves up. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, well, it seems like they're in that whole formula. They're missing not just technological but sociological. How to treat each other, and so how do we get an equal par with our technology with how we treat each other and how we regard each other? Because apparently that previous generation, they regarded the earth with some reverence, and they didn't come in here and just whip it down to its core elements. Do you have any? So you're looking at this, at least level 1 civilization that was spacefaring, and they're showing us by the moon and and I guess Mars has pyramids too. Have you looked at Mars?
Yes, Mars was a habitable planet. There's plenty of evidence of that. Pyramids, those faces up there. They lost their moon. Like if you have a planet and it doesn't have a moon, you don't have a magnetic field. You don't have any protection from the sun. You're not going to have any life or intelligent life on it. It's not going to happen. But I think there's a debris field that's traveling in the same orbital plane as Mars. 2 to 3 million miles behind Mars is what was Mars' moon at one time. Now you have Phobos and Libos or whatever. They're like tiny little rocks. They're like 200-300 miles in diameter, but they're not anything significant to create a magnetic field. Like in my books, the moon creates the magnetic field on the planet. It's not the sun. It's like, wait a minute now, the sun. Let me get this straight. The sun creates the magnetic field to protect us against the same energy that the sun puts out. Something's missing here. You can't have it both ways. But if you look at all the other planets that have moons, they have magnetic fields. If you look at planets without moons, they don't have magnetic fields. They're not alive. Yeah. So I think alive in our understanding. But you go back to different species on the planet, and going back to that, I think Native Americans, they were living in the confines of what the earth provided. Like they moved around in the seasons. They traveled, couple hundred miles one way or the other, or they were stationary. But they seemed to they didn't exhaust their resources. When we came over, when Europeans came over. They seemed that they were pretty much thriving, but they had disappeared. All the people that were down there in where is it, Machu Picchu, Peru. I think those societies were just vanished. And of course, you had Cortez came over here with the Inca, and they conquered them. For one, of course, they were looking for the gold stash and the boogeyman got afraid. They got afraid of the codexes, so they had a big book burning session. But who knows? The codexes could have had, a real good snapshot of maybe a little bit more information than what we're getting out of the clay tablets. But
Right.
It's pretty tragic, really.
Well, we have indicators that they too had a large population, like in Africa where the stones are. So apparently, and then we have stories that they became spacefaring, like we interview people in the secret space program and other things. So apparently, that part of that population could have just gone off planet, and maybe that's part of what they, what we do is like we get to the level of spacefaring and just like Elon Musk is going to go to Mars, we say, let's go somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to burst this bubble, but if you don't have a magnetic field, just look at it common sense, right? If you don't have a magnetic field that's protecting you from the streaming particles from the sun, any place or anything out there is going to have a radiation level equivalent to something in the middle of a reactor. A nuclear reactor. Mm-hmm. So you step on, you get on to, Mars or whatever. It's going to be just as hot as the core of a reactor, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at things differently. I shouldn't even talk about this, but.
Well, no, this is so hypothetical. It's interesting to examine. Think about it, because Elon Musk is heading there.
Yeah. We might want to save him. Don't send a robot. I mean, if you want to do intersolar travel, you're going to have whatever you have for a vehicle is going to have a massive electromagnetic field around it to protect it from the sun's rays. I mean, it's the Earth and the Moon are a spaceship. Spaceship Earth. We've heard that a million times. Right. So it's we're traveling. We're doing 10, 11 million miles a day. We're cruising around the galactic center of our galaxy at 11 some odd million miles a day. I think it's 223 million years to go one revolution. So the dinosaurs will come and gone like 6 more times before we make one revolution. Along with humanity, who knows? I think we just get throttled down. But so there's a lot of the space is hostile. It's a very hostile environment. I put some videos out. So
what about? Would they be able to live underground if there were Mars colonies, or would they be able to be perhaps domed with an artificial energy field to protect them? Is that something hypothetical that?
Yeah, absolutely. The technology. We have the technology to manipulate the radiation, right? I mean, that's what the sun is spewing out massive amounts of charged particles, radiation. And that's what the Van Allen belts are. The Van Allen belts are, that's created by the Earth's magnetic field. And that keeps those charged particles from making it down to the surface of the Earth. And we all know we've got evidence of radiation, ionized, charged particles. Ionized radiation is, very deadly to, any tissue, be it plant or human or whatever, animal tissue. It just destroys it, just goes right through it. Some of these things have, half a million life expectancy, or they last for 1 million or 500,000 years. So, so that all being said, it's like the technology's out there, and you look at the, obviously the Anunnaki got here, so they obviously had harnessed the technology to deal with the sun's radiation. And I think, if you're hearing anybody like Elon Musk or anybody else or any other agency talking about intersolar travel or whatever, they better be talking about some kind of field that keeps the radiation from penetrating the vessels, if they're going to have manned space missions. I mean, you could do it with probes. I mean, what do you call it there? The robotic drones, space probes. Those you can make radiation proof just with gold. Gold's great for or lead, but lead's just way too heavy. You're not going to launch a giant capsule made out of lead. But gold does a great job at protecting people from radiation. we're kind of going off the topic here, but yeah. So
if I'd like to relate to a few things, Janet.
Go ahead. Your turn.
Okay. First of all, about Mars having an atmosphere. What the Sumerians wrote in Akkadian and Sasha translated is that Maldek was a planet that was in a binary motion with Mars, and they affected each other and may have provided the kind of a stabilization that allowed an atmosphere there. So that this planet was destroyed, and its particles are what comprise the Kuiper belt of objects, which do indeed have a gravitational effect. So but there is the Sumerians noted a long time ago this exact same principle that you've enunciated about the function of having another gravitational body that was affecting the primary, and so that's right on. It's consistent with the other stuff, and about the kind of energy that's used, since it's available by the the geomagnetic stuff from the Earth and the solar stuff. There's energy, and so it's totally logical to, if it's in the ground, leave it in the ground, except perhaps gold, which you need to insulate your vehicles. But in any case, what we find, however, is that the extraction of gold from the ground has increased, not decreased, and that Mexico, Peru, and many other countries have invested huge amounts of money in having their own refineries and getting more and more oil out of the ground. And it's we're not decreasing the use of it at all. We're increasing it. And it's perfectly logical. If it's in the ground, leave it there.
Right. Agree. Yeah, so that's good information. I haven't heard the information that you talk about. It's fascinating. So there is records, there's proof and evidence that there was life on Mars. I think a couple of Egyptologists told me there's a few temples that were dedicated to Mars. They're actually they were actually dedicated. They tell the story of beings living on Mars, and I think the people that were on Mars had to evacuate relatively fast to get, to come to Earth. So
yes, that's what the story is. As this object came from the distance,
it could be it could have been an asteroid, and just
it destroyed Maldek by its gravitational pull or some other thing. But anyway, and as it proceeded next to Mars, it sucked off most of the water on the surface and a lot of the air. And as it passed Earth, it sucked off, which was then totally, it had atmospheric water and water. He sucked off enough so the two continents, Lemuria and Atlantis, arose, and it ultimately, whatever this object was, became the records that Stuart Swerdlow's read from the CIA, it became Venus. And from Venus, the engineers who came from the inside of this deliberately disguised comet or asteroid or whatever it was, built an artificial moon, put it in place, and from there they settled Earth first at Lemuria, and then they spread all over. And so there was this whole huge war when these people started fighting with the people that survived Mars. The Maldekans, who had gone underground with the Martians, were landed in the Gobi Desert. And there was this huge war, and so we have the wars inside of us, in our own sub-personalities, among us, on the Earth, out in space, and S within, so without, S here, S there, S above, S below. It's all the same thing.
Yeah. Right on, man. Right on. It's like, it's sometimes I wake up and go, are we with the leftovers from those advanced societies? Like, they literally obliterated themselves and then blew us back. They just blew us back to the Stone Age. And we're crawling back out of the Stone Age, trying to remember, trying to reutilize, what the technology we had. And, I think there's a big race to get down there to, there might be something buried under the ice. Well, I think there is. I mean, obviously down in Antarctica.
Right, yeah.
You know, so there's obviously some major interest down there that I think certain people have the big story. They have the story, right? And they get a better, clear picture of the story, and they have the money and power, and they're on pursuit, you know. And there's other people at that level of, power and money that are also in pursuit. So it's almost like the same people that blew us up are at it again, trying to acquire that technology. I mean, basically that's what they're going for. It's a technologically advanced technology, you know.
I think you're spot on because some of them don't want other people to get it, so they've been hiding the technology, and then if you read through all these ancient texts, they've got the stories there about what happened, and it basically culminated with Sodom and Gomorrah, so that was a nuclear holocaust, part of a war upon, the descendants war. I have a question before I forget it. The planet Maldek that blew up became the asteroid belt. It's, you said something million miles from Mars. Does the body have to be a solid sphere, or can a group of asteroids that have collected together because of gravitational pulls serve the same purpose as a moon?
No. You need the mass. You need it needs to be all one large body, because that in and of itself creates a large enough gravitational field. Like if you look at the asteroid belts, or just if it was planets or whatever blew up, you're like, well, why don't they all clump together? But they're all frozen. They're at like 1 or 2 Kelvin below zero. It's like 451 degrees below zero, and they're just bouncing off each other. So without heat to bring this mass back together again, to make a planet back up again, you're not going to have.
Hold on, sorry.
Yeah. So you're not going to have that gravitational energy. Now, that all being said, there is obviously everything has a grain of sand has a gravitational field in space, and that debris field that's following Mars, that was its moon, I believe it was its moon. It's still there, but it's all frozen debris. It's like a mini asteroid belt that's just a tail. It's just following in Mars's orbital plane. Its orbit around the sun. I think it's 2 to 3 million miles behind it. So as we acquire this technology back, we'll be able to create, maybe we'll be able to collect that material, heat it back up, mold it back into a moon, put it in orbit around Mars, and flash the magnetic field again, get the water back on the planet. I mean, you could grab, if you're a planet builder, right? There's thousands of resources in our solar system. Like you have moons like Europa that's all water. You could grab that and move it, take it out of orbit, crash it into Mars, and deliver the water, okay? And then you get a moon and flash the field, and get the magnetic field back together. So this is how these people built planets. So in essence, we have enough material to build 5 or 6 Earths, or maybe 100 Earths, right here in our solar system, just using that simple technology of smashing things together. Of course, you got to wait hundreds of millions of years for things to cool down and be stable again, but but you can step out of time. There's portals that open and close on the surface of the Earth all the time, and that's another big technology waiting to be harnessed. And they open and close based on the moon's alignments at certain particular locations on the planet. So, and you could just step out
John,
of time. Yes.
I had another question, and then I'd like Sasha to chime in on this.
I hope I'm answering some of the questions. I don't know if I'm answering.
You are, but I'm following the Sumerian text as well, and so we're researchers, and then there's the modern whistleblower. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of techno fix that they created, because if I'm not mistaken, they didn't just leave Mars for good. They went back, because that was the transshipment station where they would send their their mining production before they shipped it back to Nibiru. So I don't think that ended. I think they somehow fixed it somehow, so it might not be something that we're understanding, but the moon is probably the most logical way to do that. And so anyway, I love what you're saying, and I'm not sure how it works out, but according to what I'm getting from the Sumerian text, they did somehow, after that major catastrophe, they did go back and redo their operations, their mining operations and transshipment. Sasha, do you have any insight on that? And then we should wrap this up with John finish up his theories. Go ahead, Sasha, you there?
It's just that the plans that Anu conveyed included, it looked like a base on Iapetus, which is a moon of as well.
Right.
You're breaking up. Say that again, honey. Yeah. I didn't quite hear you say
Anu indicated he was going to put another base on Iapetus, which is a moon of Jupiter.
Okay.
I don't know.
So maybe they
never
did
been
something.
there, but that's what he said.
Yeah, Jupiter's got, I think they got like 80 and 90 moons. I think they just found like 18 more moons on Jupiter this last year. Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's anything's possible. I mean, there's, it's like what's, Nibiru, I don't know, it seems to be like the time, I think the times aren't right, because if Nibiru's like doing an orbit of every 3,000 or 3,200 years, I think it would have been recorded at some instance on Earth.
Yes.
And it's like, but it doesn't play out that way, because we've had recorded history we're talking like 4,000 to 5,000 years, and you get something. If you look at the Anunnaki story there, it was horrific what they did to the Earth when they came by. So I don't think that orbit
It's supposed to be Noah's flood. It's supposed to be Noah's flood was the incident that you're talking about,
right?
And that's what caused the major pull shift with Noah's flood. But then there's something happens in between, and so during the Exodus from Egypt, there was some other.
Yeah.
What was that was the.
What happens is the Lagrange points. The Lagrange points, which is debris that is accumulated at 180 degrees in the orbit and at 90 degrees of the orbit, stays in a fixed position to its planetary cluster, and it never gets closer or further away, so they say. So the Anunnaki say. And that probably what happened, some of that debris from the Lagrange point was what triggered the huge eruption of Thera. And I bet you that'll work. If we look at your when Stromboli went off, it'll tell us exactly on the other side, which caused this huge flooding. If you look at the Aegean, it sunk the Minoan fleet at Crete, and it sent these huge waves down the Persian Gulf, down to the Red Sea, and and that's what made Moses, who knew how the Red Sea was going in and out. It wasn't just Israelites he took all the Egyptians who could escape with him.
Yeah, right, beautiful, yeah. Excellent. Yeah, okay, that makes it. But is Nibiru? But Nibiru is still being touted as having a 3,200 year orbit around the sun.
No. It's said that what the Sumerians and others have said is that when it passed through at a certain time, and I've got the exact date of when that happened, it tilted Uranus even further, and it sped itself up to 3,450 years. And now what we know a lot about is they may be alluding to not just Nibiru, but to a red subdwarf named Nemesis and its planetary systems, which include Nibiru and its moons also. And there's some evidence, if you look at infrared information, there's something out there, and it's getting warmer and closer. And
Yes, they do say that there's something out there affecting the orbits of the planets that's large, quite large, whatever it is.
But they had, they had 450,000 years of recorded history, and they had many passings in the Nibiru. Every time it passed did not mean it was going to create a catastrophe. But they knew sometimes it would, so they had to monitor. That's why they created astrology and all that, is, to track who's going to be in charge and to keep track of when this Nibiru
John's
coming
formulas.
Yeah,
John, your formulas would predict. Your formulas could help us predict when the disastrous pass-throughs are and when they're not. It's built into the formula you can
it's displacement, yes. Yeah, just get the size of the mass. You could factor in something. The other thing is, it's a I don't know. It's to me. I mean, I look at it. I'm looking at it. I'm like, is the moon Nibiru? You know what I mean? It's like, it seems more, because you look at the ancient cultures. They talk about time before the moon. The Aborigines, the Dogon priests and things of that nature, and it's like, have we misinterpreted something? Because that would make a little bit more sense.
Yes.
Because if you read the Sumerian text, they said that Nibiru came into orbit around the Earth, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
No, the story says that when Yankee landed here, he was observing the moon, and he said, "Wow, it's really interesting how it affects this and that." And so I don't think if you look at the story.
Are they throwing us?
Look at the story. Yeah.
Are they throwing us off?
No,
just kidding. I mean, it's like, it's just, and then, like, I mean, we had a huge, Nibiru. It's like, well, how are they surviving? Like, we're just barely getting by with the orbit we're in. And they're way out past the energy that the sun provides.
Well, they have a second sun. No, they have a second sun. They have a brown dwarf, which is called Nemesis. So this is a binary system. Just like most of we have 1 minute. We have 1 minute. Okay.
They expect Nibiru to be uninhabitable, and they want it to be civilized before they come down here, and they want us to they're going to force us to get our act together, they say, so it'll be a safe place for them to come, because Nibiru is getting to be unlivable.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, it'd be interesting to see what they're doing with the gold. It's all this gold. We need more gold. It's like, what are they doing with the gold,
We'll have to do that next time. We're out of time, but then
insulating their vessels.
Continue this discussion. Insulating their vessels against radiation in space. Okay.
Aloha.
Okay, we'll talk again. Love and blessings. Aloha.
Beautiful. Good to meet you both.
Nice meeting you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons? Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world.
Hey everyone, it's Barbara Jean Lindsay, the Cosmic Oracle. If you have questions about your past lives or future plans, need answers from the cosmos about your love life or career, or just want to keep your finger on the pulse of the planet, check out my show, The Cosmic Oracle, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Looking for a nightcap to fill your listening needs?
Come join us on Spaced Out Radio with me, Dave Scott, right here on Revolution Radio. Monday through Friday for 3 hours a night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we will take you down the supernatural path. From E.T. contact to the paranormal and all of the spiritual, cryptid, and conspiracy stories in between. You can find us right here on Revolution Radio, at spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show. Spaced Out Radio. It's a night of talk and interaction. Are you experienced?
Hello, Karl Marx here. Look at my wonderful hair. Notice how I sweep it back.
Karl?
I call it the 360 sweep. Beard, sideburns, and the magnificent coif.
Karl!
What? What is this?
You're on the radio. They can't see you.
Oh, yeah. I get confused.
Want to learn more about the Marxist agenda and other important stuff? Listen to The Ultimate Remedy with L.B. Bork, Tuesdays 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on Revolution Radio.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
Several years ago, I was developing a very severe situation. I called it my flippy heart. It was